Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear
I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Justice Roberts to administer the presidential oath of office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation, and right now our nation is more ambitious than any other. There's no nation like our nation. Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved untold dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. I stand before you now as proof that you should never believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do best. From New York to Los Angeles, from Philadelphia to Phoenix, from Chicago to Miami, from Houston to right here in Washington, D.C., our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America, promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We are going to win like never before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In recent years, our nation has suffered greatly, but we are going to bring it back and make it great again, greater than ever before. We will be a nation like no other, full of compassion, courage, and exceptionalism. Our power will stop all wars and bring a new spirit of unity to a world that has been angry, violent, and totally unpredictable. America will be respected again and admired again, including by people of religion, faith, and goodwill. We will be prosperous. We will be proud. We will be strong, and we will win like never before. We will not be conquered. We will not be intimidated. We will not be broken, and we will not fail. From this day on, the United States of America will be a free, sovereign, and independent nation. We will stand bravely. We will live proudly. We will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know the words, help me out here. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace
conclusion of the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Quite a lot of interesting individuals spoke and sang at this. I should note that the main singer, Christopher Macchio, that's kind of a nod to the president's late brother, Robert. Robert was a big fan of Christopher Macchio and introduced him to it, so his presence is in no small way a nod to his late brother. And the priest, the Brooklyn priest, Frank Mann, Father Francis Mann, really interesting story. Francis Mann was at a Queens cemetery and noticed the graves of President Trump's parents. This is during the presidency, I believe, so President Trump wasn't able to visit it with the regularity he did before he became president. The graves had fallen into some disrepair. He cleaned it up. He bought a weed whacker. He cleaned it up, and he sent a photograph to the president, and the president was very moved. So kind of an homage to his parents as well. Dana Bash, what did you make of the speech, the president talking about ushering in a golden era of the United States? He certainly said a number of things that I'm sure outgoing president, former President Biden didn't care for. And we saw Hillary Clinton's head shaking no at one point. But it was the agenda that he was elected on.
Yeah, look, there were a few lines that were more sort of classic inaugural address lines about his sort of more sweeping lines about what he intends to do, what he has promised, the kind of America that he wants to see, saying America's decline is over, which is a new version of Make America Great Again, calling it Liberation Day. But there were also so many specifics in this speech that we don't usually hear in an inaugural address. It's more akin to a State of the Union address, a list of the things that he intends to do. Now, all of the things that we heard, virtually all of the things, were things that we heard on the campaign trail, except the Panama and changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
And the American flag on Mars.
And the American flag on Mars. The first two being things that I don't believe he can just do with the stroke of a pen. But regardless, just tonally, the fact that he not only did that kind of specific speech and give those specific and pointed partisan notes in that speech, it looked a little bit more awkward than it normally would when you have the person who you defeated there, in this case, two people he defeated there, behind you, because it's inside and so intimate. You could almost kind of feel a little bit of the cringe there inside. But make no mistake about it, what Donald Trump said and the kind of promises that he made, for the most part, are why people went and voted for him.
These are the principal eight, is what they're called, the principal eight, the incoming and outgoing first and second couples. They're walking through an area of the Capitol called the Crypt, and at the end of it, the departure of now former President Joe Biden. Abby, your reaction to the speech?
In many ways, it was very much a Donald Trump campaign speech. It's what you might hear if you went to one of his rallies. And Jason Miller was speaking to you earlier today, and he telegraphed that Trump was going to dispense with the flowery language. He was not interested in much of that in this speech. He has a to-do list to do. But one thing that I was very struck by was the way that he played prominently in his speech in this moment. Usually presidents spend a lot of time talking about the country, about their vision for the nation, about its place in the world. And Donald Trump talked a lot about him and how difficult it was for him to endure the last 4 years and the journey back to the White House. He talked about how his life was saved, he believed, by God to make America great again. And the reason that's notable is because he understands that for his supporters, that is part of his political story. That's one of the reasons, as we were talking about earlier, that they love him and adore him so much. Trump is very much leaning into that and using it as a source of power, political power, that he goes into this second non-consecutive term in the White House.
I mean, he didn't say American carnage, but it wasn't as far off from American carnage as we were led to believe. There were hopeful moments, but there were a lot of very specific kind of broadsides against
and
the
I
current
also,
administration. And there's just one other thing,
Yeah.
forgive me, Abby, that I want to say, because I think it is important to note. Where he was giving that speech in the Capitol Rotunda 4 years ago, people in his name were desecrating that very building, that very area, because they did not want him to leave office. They believed the lies he was telling, that he actually did win.
Caitlin Collins, there were a number of religious leaders that spoke, from Rabbi Ari Berman, the president of Yeshiva University, to Franklin Graham, to Cardinal Timothy Dolan, the Archbishop of New York. But the one that seemed to arouse the most joy from President Trump was Reverend Lorenzo Sewell from West Detroit, from the Evangel Ministries in West Detroit. And Trump, after he spoke, after his rousing benediction, Trump said to Lorenzo Sewell, "You're a star."
And Jake, I'll tell you, my dad texted me after that and said, quote, "I'm going to Lorenzo's church one day." He thought that he nailed it and really appreciated those comments there from him. But Jake, on the president's speech overall, you know, I had talked to his advisors in the lead up to this. They had previewed a unifying speech, but I think really the theme of what we just heard there was vindication from Trump himself as he was talking about the state of the United States and sought to cast it in dire straits that only he can fix, and really castigated Biden's legacy while sitting just a few feet away from him, causing, you know, some bemused looks from President Biden, who at times laughed when Trump said he was going to sign executive orders restoring common sense inside the United States. Hillary Clinton there, who you see, she burst out laughing when Trump said he was going to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. But really what Trump was doing there and laying out really what he's posted on Truth Social for the better part of a year now are all of the priorities that he is going to seek to implement now that he's in office. And he very clearly feels emboldened. And you can see that he is at the sense of the height of his powers in this moment of what he wants to do with this position. And there's a reason for that, Jake, by the very people in this room, all of the big tech leaders in this country seated behind him and listening to him, the Republican Party firmly in his grasp. The question, of course, is what this looks like now that he actually is in power, and if he can make good on all of the campaign promises, many of which he repeated today and did not back off of that language, as you heard from him there. But very clearly, not a unifying speech, but one of vindication for Donald Trump. Anderson?
Caitlin, thanks very much. Back with the team here in the D.C. Bureau. John King?
It was a dark speech, but it was also a very ambitious speech. And I think in the next hour, even as the president is celebrated at this luncheon on Capitol Hill, it's going to take a moment. We're going to get the first couple executive orders, and we're told this is going to go into the late night hours tonight. We're going to keep getting the new policy. I think he laid down some markers there that he needs to keep, or his party will want him to keep. Donald Trump won't be on the ballot again, but he said we're going to rapidly bring down costs and prices. Rapidly. That's a big test. That is the number one issue in the country. The cost of living is why he's president of the United States. He also said we're going to expand our territory. That's an interesting question. When George W. Bush, the last Republican president before Donald Trump came in, he talked about a humble foreign policy and peace in the neighborhood. Donald Trump said we're going to take it back of the Panama Canal. He didn't say we're going to use military force to do that, but he said we're going to take it back. So he talked about manifest destiny, expanding the territory of the United States. The immigration stuff will be both part of his mandate, which he has, but also part of his test. Does he overreach it, to get too far out over his skis? I think the thing I'm looking for is this is night and day. Joe Biden and Donald Trump is night and day in terms of how they conduct themselves and the things they want to do. As these orders come out today, not only what do they do, what specifically do they do, what is the tone?
David?
Well, I'm going to paraphrase something I said at the Republican convention. You remember at the Republican convention, right after the president was shot, we were told that he had thrown his speech out and he was going to give a very positive, hopeful speech. And he had a few pages of that, and then he kind of devolved into his campaign speech, which was very, very dark. And this, too, it was sort of an American carnage burger in a golden era bun. The front and the back had something uplifting. The middle of it was very familiar, sort of dystopian rhetoric that he ran on, to be fair, that included his personal grievances and some false assertions that'll be sorted out. But as John said, also laid down some markers. And the question is, will he meet those markers? The idea, for example, that we're going to drill, baby, drill, and that's going to cut energy costs, he said yesterday, in a year in half. I mean, these are things that are measurable. And if people see him on a bunch of other kind of more retribution-oriented or exotic missions, and those markers aren't met, problem for him and the Republican Party.
And we're about to see former President Biden and former First Lady Jill Biden going in the helicopter. Scott Jennings, your thought?
I thought this was an incredible speech, honestly, and truly watching Donald Trump indict these gangsters to their faces while they had to sit right in front of him in that intimate setting in the rotunda for Republicans was remarkable. They had to sit there and take it just minutes after Biden, who we're looking at here, pardoned his entire family. I mean, it was glorious. By the way, I love the rotunda setting. I thought it was regal. I thought it was awesome. And listening to him talk about how he's going to exercise his power today reminded me that he is absolutely ascendant. He is at the apex of his political power right now. And, you know, the promise of a new presidency is enormous. You get this power and you have influence, and the mandate is to change people's lives for the better and to restore American prestige. And he began to explain how he was going to do that immediately. The mandate's simple. It's economic relief, it's fix the immigration crisis, steer the country away from the cultural left, and restore American prestige. The speech hit several notes on that front, and I agree with Caitlin. Today, Republicans feel vindicated, and Trump is back to fix the country.
We just saw the Vice President Harris, former Vice President Harris, and her husband saying goodbye to the Bidens. Let's go to Jeff Zeleny, who's standing by. Jeff?
Extraordinary moments of an inaugural ceremony when the incoming president escorts the outgoing president to the waiting Marine One. I'm thinking back right now to 8 years ago when President Trump did the same thing with outgoing President Barack Obama, and that was an extraordinary moment. They walked down the steps that day, not as cold that day, not as windy that day, but now they came out the ground level here, and they are waiting there for the motorcade to move by, and then President Trump will take a final walk with former President Joe Biden and former First Lady Jill Biden to Marine One, and the Bidens will lift off and take one last look back at Washington as they head to Joint Base Andrews, and then they will fly to California. This is the true transfer of power here of the current president and the former president making this walk. The senators, the committee watching as this happens here. It's blustery, it's cold. You can see First Lady Melania Trump holding her hat there. And this is a poignant moment for Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., who came to Washington as the youngest senator and is leaving now as the oldest American president.
Van, this is the final moments of Joe Biden's political career here in Washington.
Yeah, you know, 50 years is a long time. That's a half a century. And he's spent about half a century in that town, often going home on the Amtrak train, talking to everybody, meeting everybody. And he believed from a young age that he had something to give this country, that he had something to offer that was special, and that someday he'd be in the White House, and he was. And history will judge him in some ways harshly, but he's leaving behind a better economy than he found, and he's leaving with more grace and dignity than he was shown by this man who's now walking up those stairs. And I think the country needs to show some appreciation for the mess he inherited and what he did with it. The speech that we just heard had some good stuff in it and some bad stuff in it. The good stuff Donald Trump said he's not going to use political power to prosecute political opponents. Good. I hope he is telling the truth about that. He said he did not promise in that speech to end birthright citizenship. That is important. He didn't double down on that. That's important. And he said impossible is what we do best, which I agree. But the rest of the speech was him fixing problems that don't exist and making problems worse that do exist. We are already the most energy dominant country in the world. There's no shortage of oil permits. There is no EV mandate. The real threat to Detroit is the Chinese automakers that are kicking our butts making EVs. We got to catch them.
I just want to check in with MJ Lee. MJ, you've been covering this White House for some time. Your thoughts on seeing this?
Yeah, I think we do need to take a real beat to talk about the news that we got from former President Joe Biden just moments after he had stepped into the Capitol Rotunda. It was actually 11:38 exactly that this announcement hit my inbox. An extraordinary and unprecedented announcement to preemptively pardon multiple members of his family. We are talking about Biden's siblings and their respective spouses being offered preemptive pardons. The timing just could not have been more remarkable given that it came just moments after President Biden had ridden in the motorcade with President Trump. They had shared pleasantries inside the White House over tea. And now we had this announcement from the former president, again, Joe Biden, saying he worried about how his own family members would be targeted by Donald Trump. And I am told by a source familiar with his thinking that this was in no small part driven by Donald Trump's public promise to appoint a special prosecutor to go after every member of the Biden family, that this was something that was incredibly worrisome to Joe Biden, that's something that really haunted him as he thought about the prospects of his life after office. And if you look at the extraordinary written statement that we got from President Biden, it kind of gets at that sentiment. He said, even when individuals have done nothing wrong and will ultimately be exonerated, the mere fact of being investigated or prosecuted can irreparably damage their reputations and finances. Anderson, as we watch President Biden take off, now that he is no longer the sitting president, we have been talking about all of the different ways in which he himself ended up tarnishing his own reputation in these final days in office, including reneging on his word to be a bridge candidate by seeking a second term, the decision to pardon his son Hunter after repeatedly saying he wouldn't. And then with this, the preemptive pardoning of multiple members of his family, it was back in December of 2020 that he told our colleague Jake Tapper regarding reports of Donald Trump at the time potentially preemptively pardoning his own children. He said, in terms of the pardons, you are not going to see in our administration that kind of approach to pardons. It's just going to be totally different, the way in which we approach the justice system. Well, as it turns out, Anderson, there was another promise broken. That is exactly how he has ultimately decided to approach the justice system. And this is a decision that is going to raise so many alarming questions about the legal precedent that this now sets, and will have been really one of the very final acts for President Biden as a sitting president. And here he is now flying off. We know that he is going to be going on vacation with the former First Lady in California, where, of course, some of his family members reside. Anderson?
Alyssa, it was remarkable. There were pardons earlier this morning for General Mark Milley and others. These last-minute pardons were clearly timed. They were signed before, but timed to be released after the car ride once the final inauguration was beginning.
Yeah, it very much felt like a news dump of pardons. There was no way there was going to be good coverage around this. And while I think many people could argue why Milley, Fauci, and others should be inoculated with these pardons and not prosecuted for doing what they did as government officials, this is much, much muddier. And the right has argued for years that there are foreign dealings, there are ways in which the Biden family has profited that should be looked into. And this just underscores what so many in this country believe And Joe Biden sang a very different tune to Jake Tapper and to others about how he wouldn't do this. And it feeds into this notion, the same party that runs on upholding democratic norms, Joe Biden in many ways undercut them in the end. And I think that puts Donald Trump in a stronger position of power. But one thing I was really struck by watching this is the mainstreaming of Donald Trump. Of course, he was a president before, but you can't dismiss him as an anomaly anymore. He is as much part of the fabric of American history as Barack Obama, George Bush, and you saw it from the tech titans there to the A-list celebrities like Carrie Underwood to, the CEO of a fashion conglomerate. This is a very different Donald Trump presidency than the first time he was in office.
If you're going to do these things, I was covering the Clinton White House when at the very last minute when the then soon-to-be former President Clinton was on his way to the Capitol when they pardoned this billionaire Mark Rich, who was a fugitive and had violated all sorts of sanctions against Iran and other countries around the world. It's just unseemly. If you're going to do it, have the courage to do it in the light of day and explain it to the American people. It's a stain on his legacy to do it like this. We can have an argument about, is it necessary? Has Donald Trump promised retribution? Yes, he has. But if you're the President of the United States who said that the curse of Donald Trump was that he didn't respect democracy and didn't respect norms, have the courage to look the American people in the eye and explain what you're doing.
Yeah, the way it was done suggests that there was something wrong with doing it. Yeah. He tried to slip it in in the final minutes, and that was.
Really,
yeah.
The escalating rhetoric from Trump, though. I mean, he says in the pardon statement, he said, this acceptance should not be misconstrued as an admission of guilt.
No, I know what he said. I mean, he said that. Yeah, I know what he said, but the fact is that Trump has been saying this for a long time. That doesn't explain why in the last 10 minutes of your presidency you
in the spouses
slip
names
a
I've never
release
heard
out
come
there.
out of Donald Trump.
It just made the whole thing look tawdry.